So this session is the aging world, and it's about how populations are getting older. And everybody's getting older in every way. So it's getting older. The solution to getting older or younger, get older. So the population is aging. Most of you know that kind of instinctively. You've kind of noticed that. One of the things that I was talking to Ragesh about the other day, yesterday I think, is just look around you as you walk around in your daily life. How many babies do you see? How many women pushing baby strollers? A couple. They used to be everywhere. There used to be kids playing in the front yard. There used to be children walking up and down the street. Seen a kid on a bike lately? Unless you're not, right by a school. In your neighborhood, go to the parks. There's no kids in the parks. What's in the parks? Homeless people. Homeless people. Something is changing right in front of our eyes, and it's really profound. And I think we're missing it. So this section, this meeting, this show is about that. There you go. Okay, I made this up. It's not really a noun, but there is a term called population aging. And the way it's defined is an increasing median age in the population of a region due to declining fertility rates and or rising life expectancy. Now that sounds pretty obvious, right? We're living longer, healthier lives. We're living like these people. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. 75% of humans over 70 years old. What? I want you guys to start thinking about that. 75% of humans over 70 years old. And by the end of this, you'll start to see that's a very potential reality for us in the near future. This show, by the way, this show is all AEON2. We're not going to talk about AEON3 at all. I get criticized sometimes for that from some of you, but this show is all about an AEON2 problem that we have to get over to get to the third AEON. Got it? Okay. Look at these old people. They're all having fun. They're healthy. They're happy. They're living long. They're seeing their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. Very common now. They're dancing and going to salsa classes and rocking out, listening to the internet, doing all these crazy things. They're partying a little much sometimes maybe way too much, right? This is not an uncommon thing to see these days. Old people that are in their 60s and 70s acting like they're in their 40s and 50s. It's amazing because it's an evolution. And just to drive that point home, I'm going to show you this, hopefully. And I'll probably show you an ad on accident, which I do occasionally. I did notice that Windows was installing updates on my computer on the other side, so at any second, this could all go totally sideways. Okay, let's go. Okay, you guys ready for this now? Yes. Now, this is a hip-hop dance routine. The lady that is the lead in this is 60 years old. She's a dance teacher. 60. The best part is her attitude. And then she does this. Yeah. Listen to the crowd. Okay, that's just pure insanity. Let's get the picture. Living longer, happier, healthier lives.
unlike my computer, who's living a short and very sad life right now. Okay, there we go. Somehow we came back. So the proportion of the world population, this is world population now, not the US, that is over 60 years old. So in 1950 it was 8%. It's a very low number. In 2000 it's 10%. By 2050 it's 21%. Look at how fast that grew. Get how fast that's growing? 75%, over 70, when? It's a when statement. Kind of wild. Soon, sooner than you think. This is proportion of the population that's 65 or older in the G7 countries. So you'll notice Japan is way out here with 25%. You think it's freaky around here with 14.5% over 60. This is freaky, and you'll see this later. I'm going to show you some videos from Japan. Things there are our future. That's what we're going to be seeing pretty quick here. So what's going on globally? Let's take a little quick view at another video here to give some more kind of baseline for you guys. In theory, this will work. That was much smoother that time.
The world is getting older. How much older? By 2050, the number of people over 65 will triple. A new aging attitude survey of 21 countries by the Pew Research Center found that Japan is the most worried about aging. 87% of people think it's a problem. That's in contrast to the US, where only 26% of people are concerned. The survey found that the older the population is predicted to be, the more they're worried about aging. Countries also have different takes on who should care for the old. Only a few have a big chunk of people who think seniors should care for themselves. Overall, most people think the government should be responsible. But also look at a place like Pakistan, where 77% of folks think it's up to families. All this aging can hurt economies. Spain's a good example. In the future, there will be more people, younger and older, relying on those of working age. The US, however, may have an advantage here. Its population is growing slower and getting older, but it's still projected to be younger than major trading partners in Europe and Asia. That's because America has the most immigrants of any country. They're bringing higher fertility rates, even as US-born women are having less babies. Between 1960 and 2005, immigrants and their descendants accounted for 51% of US population growth. Now, between 2005 and 2050, they're accounting for 22% of that growth. Pew says countries with the biggest chances of economic boosts may be those with the youngest populations. Among these, Nigeria is well placed. By 2050, it's projected to have a bigger population than the United States. David Bonte, BBC News, Washington.
Interesting, huh? Okay, so did you guys catch the part that the US is changing its racial demographics? That is one of the things that's contributing to us not aging as fast. That's why our aging number is lower. Because people come here to live the American dream, and then they have families and babies, and they have more kids than Americans. It's kind of fascinating. But you also sense that, don't you? This is what causes a lot of the racial instability in the United States. As the demographics change so radically in such a short amount of time, these are crazy. By 2020, by 2000, in 2000, white people were 68% of the population. By 2050, they'll be 49%. So your perception that people are moving here and taking over the United States is 100% true. But it's also holding down our population aging, which is a good thing, and making us economically stronger. So it's something most people don't consider about the demographics of immigration and how it's affecting the United States. But this I thought was a fascinating number. This is a little hard to read, so I'll kind of walk you guys through it. So this is the projected population growth of immigrants in selected countries. So the red line there is the United States. So that's immigrant origin population growth, not overall population growth. So you can see it goes from 20% in roughly 2008 on up to, by 2050, almost 40%. And then this one down here is Austria. This is Germany. This one's Norway. And that's the UK, non-whites only. And this is the dotted line is New Zealand, which ends over there for some reason. This is UK projected with its ethnic minorities built in. But no matter how you look at this, the whole population growth in our area in the West is growing very dramatically because of the giant human migration that's going on towards the West from the Middle East and from the East. That's changing the racial structures of Western countries profoundly, and is changing their population aging growth as a result of it. So it's not just better medicine and us living longer that's causing this aging growth thing. It's an economic change. There's all kinds of things that are going into it. So basically the answer to that question is no. Everyone thinks, oh, it's just better medicine, right? It's just better medicine. That's it. No, there's all kinds of things going on here. So this is where I go all Ross Perot on you guys. That's a joke for the older folks. The younger folks in the room are like, who? Exactly. Duron's like, what? Okay, so I'm going to draw a couple charts here. Where'd my purple pen go? Where's this it? Oh, this is it, sorry. Okay, so this is population. We're going to start out here at 0. Then we're going to go up here to 10 billion. That's a big number, right? And then we're going to go across this way, and we're going to do that as time. And we're going to start at the year 1000. And then we're going to have 1500s. Then we're going to have 1750, because it's in the way of time. And then we're going to have 2000. Here we are right here. And then here's 2000, 2100. Why am I always focused on the year 2100? That's AEON3. Okay, so if we do this and go for population over time, population stayed relatively flat, and it grew just a tiny bit for a long period of time. And then coming here into the early 1700s, it kind of started doing this. And by the year, might be a little too wide, by the year 2000, oh, I didn't do these, sorry guys, hold on, I'm screwing this up. 2.5 million, 5 million, 7.5, oh, this is billion, 7.5 billion, not million, and then 10 billion. There we go, okay. So there we go, and then here we are, right about here today, right? Right about there, 7.5 billion today. And we're going to keep going. By the year 2100, most people say we're going to get to 10 billion. But then an interesting thing happens. We start to taper off. And almost every estimation is that we'll either maintain or go down somewhere out here, which is really interesting. We'll talk more about that later. So what's the most important part of this chart? And I could go back, this is only year 1000, right? I could go back way further back, and human populations are going to be relatively stable. What changed? 1750, come on, 1750, 1700s, 17th to the 18th. Industrial Revolution, sure, that happened here, right in this. Right? Okay, so let's draw some of the things that you guys say changed. I have notes. Well, let's look at it a little different way, and then we'll do that, and we'll draw some things on the board. Does that sound good? Any questions about this? Do you guys get that this is the biggest thing that ever happened to human beings? This span of years from here to here is like 200 years. It's like the day before yesterday. 300 years, boom. Everything changed. We changed the total planet in the most unnatural of ways, instantaneously. Okay, so I'm going to start over. Y'all are good listeners. Oh, I'm going to leave that. Sorry, I didn't mean to erase that. I'm doing a really bad job of erasing. So now we're going to look at this in birth rates, not population. Sorry. So this is births. And we're going to go with, same basic story. Whoops, wrong line. And this is, we're going to do the same basic time frame, I think. Well, I didn't really write that. We'll just say time, it doesn't matter. And then I got to get rid of all this stuff because that's what we don't want. Okay. So in birth rates, you start off here and the rate of births and the rate of deaths is real close. That's optimal. With births being a little higher, it'd be great if I had a different color. It's green, but the higher line is births. And then what happened is right around 1750 here, the death rate drops precipitously. What's interesting about that is that the birth rate continues on for a little while, and then it drops. And then on around just a little further than we are now, it goes below the death rate. These are deaths. These are births. That's what happened. And this little area right here is population. ION. That's your population growth. Get it? Get what happened? So what happened? That was the point where we asked the question. What happened? Throw out some things. What caused the death rate to drop? Because that's the first thing that happened. Sanitation. That's a terrible pen. Let's not use that pen ever again, because it writes in the same color as the grease board. So sanitation. What was another one you guys threw out? Medicine. Antibiotics is a spelling test. A-N-T-I biotics.
Nutrition.
Food. Nutrition. You guys are doing good. Keep going. Come on. I have a much longer list here. Huh?
Change in technology.
Well, you got to be more specific, though.
Like the Industrial Revolution, like urbanization, globalization. We travel around the world.
That doesn't lower the death rate, though. Urbanization. Urbanization definitely lowers the death rate, right? Because you're closer access to healthcare, right? People that are far out in the boonies, you know, their kids get sick. Sorry, you die.
Mechanization.
Transportation mechanization. Ooh, good one. That was on my list. V-A-C, somebody spell that. V-A-C-C-I-N-I. It's good enough. Vaccines. Transportation. We'll just put mech. You guys are doing good. You're basically describing the Industrial Revolution. That's what did it. That's what caused this to happen and caused us to go from, you know, a couple of billion people to 7.5 billion people and on our way to 10 billion people literally overnight. What caused the birth rate to drop?
People got too busy.
Busy people. Why were they busy?
More things to do.
But why? What specifically made them busy? You're right. Well, that's true. Pause. Factories is going. Factory workers. Women's liberation and suffrage. Birth control is probably the biggest one.
I think also because they had more kids that were surviving, so maybe they were like, we don't want any more.
Healthcare. I spelled that right. Healthcare.
More forms of entertainment besides biology or urbanization.
Entertainment, which is part of urbanization. You guys are doing great. Urbanization. I would say change of religious attitudes overall, especially in the West. So I might call this the abandonment of religion. But I might call it the abandonment of traditional. Old school. Traditional. Something like that. But you get the idea. There has been a definite change in religion where they're not like pushing you, have babies, have babies, have babies, have babies. I want my babies, my babies, my babies, my babies. You guys knew I was going to do that, didn't you?
Well, grandparents got busy dancing and they weren't pushing the kids to have more babies.
You missed a couple of big ones, guys. Come on. You can do better. Why don't people have 5 kids anymore? It costs too much money. Costs. Too high. The raising ing of property costs. Right? If 70% of your income, which is what it is for most people today, goes towards home or domicile, your ability to raise children is totally different. Totally different. You can't afford 5 kids. You just can't. Here's another problem. Think about, you guys said it earlier, think about what it takes to make somebody that can do these jobs. The requirement for skilled labor went up, right? How do you become a skilled laborer? L-A-B. More education. More ed. If you have to do more education, what do you have to do as a woman? Because you're liberated now. You want to be skilled labor, you're going to stay in college longer, and what are you going to give up? Having kids when you're young. Postponement of having children, some things I had. I have the breakdown of the traditional family, right, which is a definite reality. We don't have traditional families like we do anymore. We've totally changed the structures of how we live as all long-tail repercussions of the Industrial Revolution. This is the 1750s and the 1800s coming around to bite us. We started down this trail way back here, and we're just now seeing what it causes. Get it? Isn't it cool? Okay. Depending on where you're standing. Could be cool. Do you guys like the Ross Perot segment?
Just one more thing.
Sure.
When you said, when I said urbanization,
Yeah.
it's true, but it was not transparent for why. And one of the reasons is that rural people could have more children and put them to work on the farm, but that's not true for urban folks.
Absolutely. One of the things on my list is the reduced need for child labor, for family child labor. Today I went to a restaurant with some of the folks here, and the whole restaurant was run by an Asian family. And the youngest kid was there doing the cash register and doing stuff, right? It was a need for child labor. They needed 5 kids to run that restaurant. That's not how things are done much in the modern world anymore. You don't need kids to work the farm. And you don't need spare kids in case some of the kids don't make it, right? That whole dynamic has changed. A lot going on here, right? Not just medicine. Most people think that our living longer and all that is due to medicine. Look at all these things you guys came up with, and medicine is one of them.
What does Ross Perot have to do with it?
He does a lot of charts. You don't remember his presidential campaign? Okay. So this is female life expectancy from 1840 to the present in years. So in 1840, the average lifespan of a female on the planet, pretty roughly, was about 45 years. Today, it's 95 years. No, it's 85 years. We've doubled lifespans in a very short amount of time. Look at the angular trajectory of that chart. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Men don't live as long as women, right? Surprise, that's changing. We're catching up. Men are starting to live longer. We're starting to narrow the gap. Our chart, if it was on here, looks a little bit lower, and it is going like this now, right at the end here. They're almost together now. And that's because of reduced labor for men, right? We're not doing heavy, dangerous labor. We're not working ourselves to death, quite literally, right? We're not what?
Not so many wars.
Not so many wars, that's true. We're not sending ourselves off to war to die. There's a whole change in the whole male species that's all part of this, and we're becoming more equal to women in our life expectancy, which I found fascinating doing the research for this segment. And of course, as you guys have already guessed, we've gone from 8 children per woman in the US in the 1800s to now we're below 2, 1.6 or something like that. That's everything you guys just said, right? That's a giant change. As you walk around the world, there's no kids anymore. And expect that to get worse. This isn't going to go up. This is going to go down to 0.5 or lower. Less kids, more old people. Got it? We did it to ourselves. actually, our great-grandparents did it to ourselves, did it to us, which was a good thing, right? Once you see Paris, you never really want to go back to the ranch. Once you invent C-sections, you don't want to go back to not having C-sections, which means you lowered the infant mortality rate dramatically, which is great. This is not a genie you could or should put back in the bottle. This one's really confusing the way they did it, but it's interesting. So the reason I'm boring you with this, guys, is this number right here is population, the red line. So it goes from, in 1950, it was, I don't know, 3 billion. And then here we are somewhere around here. It's about 7.5, and then it should get to 10 billion is where that is by 2100. The interesting number here is this orange line. That's the average age in years of the world. The average age of the world's population. It went from 28 to 42, doubled globally. This isn't a US thing. It's actually much worse in other countries. We're way down the list on the aging population problem. And this blue thing, I can't explain it. It's the total number of years lived by all people in the world. I'm not sure why that's a cool statistic, but there it is. So economic reality is starting to set in, and I got a video for you guys. Because you guys like the videos, right?
This may be China's looming problem, what to do with all the older people.
This is China.
Nursing homes, a new industry in China, and we're at one of the best in Beijing. There's not much to do. But there's help 24 hours a day. At 96, Dubois Tang is the oldest man here. Long ago, members of his family died or moved away.
I lived at home, but then the place was pulled down. I found a little room and moved into it and lived by myself. Then I got sick, and someone told me about this new place with good conditions, so I came here.
The facilities are clean and there's plenty of light, but even this well-run place wishes it could provide more.
We want everything to do.
We want to make improvements, such as for our central heating system, but it costs about $30,000 in order to keep everyone warm.
This isn't the sort of place they're supposed to end up in. They should be with their families, surrounded by children and grandchildren. That is the Chinese way, or at least that was the Chinese way.
Confucian tradition says sons and daughters should take care of their parents into old age. That's the way things have been for thousands of years. But then, the government intervened in China's natural demographic course. The one-child policy may have averted unsustainable population growth, but decades down the line, it's clear one problem has been replaced by another, because the old people now outnumber the young.
The family structure has changed. We don't find a lot of examples of, for example, 3 generations living under the same roof, which was very more usual in the past.
Mr. Guo and his wife are in their 70s. They live alone, but remember a time when families lived together under a communist work unit. Life is more complicated now. Their son is a cab driver, putting in 12 to 14 hours a day. Mr. Guo Jr. has little time to swing by and check up on them. In turn, he sometimes wonders who will take care of him when he gets on in age. His single child, if married, will have to deal with the burden of taking care of 2 sets of grandparents.
I have more income and no time to see my parents, so I think life is harder for them than in the past. Everyone used to live together, so we could take care of each other.
If the children can't take care of their parents, the state must. By 2050, 1/3 of Chinese will be over the age of 60. That means 437 million people who will need help. Melissa Chan, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
Those are some numbers, huh? So you would think that this wouldn't be a problem in China, where they have the family unit idea, right? But you see it breaking down. The modern world is changing their lives. It's forcing the young people to go to work and to live productive lives, and the economics of the future are breaking down. We already know this, right? All of our meetings come to the same conclusion. The next thing that's really going to mess us up is the economics of the future. Everybody working to pay more and more for less and less, and making more money, but having less buying power. And that's forcing these young people to go off and work longer and longer and longer and longer days. And I don't know if you caught it at the end there, the compounding problem that the next generation is probably going to be financially responsible for not one set of grandparents, but 2 or potentially 3 because of population aging extension, right? Think about what a dramatic challenge that is for young people who are already overburdened with the inability to pay mortgages and higher real estate prices. Make sense? That's why I wanted to talk about this, because you're on your own in the United States. There's no government that's going to solve this problem for you. You know this, right? As you age in the United States, you go back to work if you don't have some retirement plan. That's just the reality of a capitalistic society. 1 in 3 Americans have saved for retirement. Very few of us save for retirement. And even the ones that do, it's not sufficient, right? No retirement savings, 33%. 13%, only 300K of savings. How long would 300K last you 20 years from now? Not long, especially if you're renting. You have to have purchased and own and have paid off real estate in order to survive economically, even up here. It's going to be tough. 62% of workers age 65 or older are full-time. That's up 44% since 95. That's a crazy number. How many people in here over 50 are going on their second or third career? I'm one of them, right? Think about that. We're trying to reinvent ourselves. We have to. We can't stop working. There's no way we're on our own. It's America. Get out there and fight, old people, myself included. And this is what we're doing. Anybody gone to a fast food restaurant and seen any young people working there anymore? A few, but they're getting pushed out, aren't they? Those jobs are for this person. Because they're better. They're better. They don't get sick. They have great health care. They show up to work on time. They have a fabulous work ethic. They'll work for almost nothing. And they know how to make change. They speak English, right? On and on and on. Everybody's met this guy, right? She's a little over the top, right? Is that right? Does that picture feel right to anybody? It's not right. What about young people? Think of all the jobs that are being displaced that are traditional service jobs by older and older folks. I can't pay my rent on $7.40 an hour. That's absolutely true. The economics of the minimum wage and the way that we're structuring our economy is never going to work for young people. We always come back to they're the ones that are going to get disenfranchised the most. So we must find a way to solve this problem. This is kind of the end of my presentation where you guys can now ask questions and we can get into it. But we have to find a way to solve this problem, to balance this equation. And the US is less under pressure right now than many other places because we have immigration slowing down this reality for us. More young people in the workplace balances the economy so that we can have more jobs for older folks. There's actually more stuff balanced out for us to do. And a lot of that we owe to immigration right now. So I really want you to think about when people are saying we don't want immigrants in this country. I guarantee you in 10 years, countries will be actively lobbying for immigration into their country, especially for high fertility rate people that are bringing in young families.
You left out a modifier.
A modifier?
We don't want illegal.
True, but true, absolutely. But we're also relatively negative on immigration in America. How many people have heard these things? They're taking our jobs, right? They're working in the low-grade jobs that would typically be for young people. There was a meeting here in Huntington Beach just recently that went very ugly, where Huntington Beach decided to sue the state of California over the sanctuary city law. That decision I don't really care about. What I care about is during that meeting, there was a lot of very negative racial slurs that were said by people in the meeting. Very negative. This racism thing that's becoming popular in America, we got to slow that down. And certainly illegal immigration, illegal anything is illegal, right? We should slow that down. But we need to be careful on what we're doing with some of our balancing of how we think about things. Because these long tail things, when we started going into factories and changing the realities of economies in the early mid 1700s, we never thought about that it would ever cause this. It's something you couldn't imagine. You could have, but it would have been really hard. If we don't figure this out, this is where our older folks are going to wind up. When you look at those people in the parks around here, they're not young. They're not Mexicans. They're not immigrants. They're old people. They're your grandmothers and grandfathers. Get it? They're going to fall off the back of the train because there's nowhere for them to go. Once you lose that job at McDonald's and you're renting an apartment, we have no net for this. This is all hard ground. Make sense? And that's why I'm so passionate about this particular issue. I wasn't so passionate when I started researching for this, but it's one of those things as you start researching it, it just jumps off the page at you. This is a disaster that's about to hit us. It's already hitting us. And I didn't really sense it. The number one issue in Orange County, California, according to NPR, the number one issue is the homeless problem. There is no other issue here. That's the issue. And it is directly, I think, related to this. I think most of those folks down there are older folks. Certainly there's a whole drug pandemic that's a problem that's going on. And there's other economic problems. You know, the rising cost of real estate versus income is a huge problem. There's lots of other things. But for me, this is one of the things that is, there, you know, when I was young, I watched my dad depend on his parents when he needed help. And as I've gone through challenges in my life, I've needed my parents and grandparents to give me help. But in this next generation, that may not be possible because of that compounding problem, right? The numbers get worse as we go into the future. So it's something that we have to figure out before we get to the third AEON, because as we start to get closer and bring in more technology and more things that are going to profoundly change the human experience, if we don't know how to take care of people that don't want that, see what I'm talking about? And that's a future meeting where we're going to talk about some potential solutions. But I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on, you know, what do you think about this?
Well, I have one idea, which is we have to make it worthwhile for people of means to want to help the homeless and the people that don't have anything. And so they need to be given a lot of credit and some kind of recognizable credit where they've contributed to helping to build a large establishment that maybe houses 50 families of homeless people. Because, I mean, I just get overwhelmed. I drive down to Newport Beach, I look across the hill, and I see 50,000 homes, and there's not one of them that's worth less than $1 million.
Yeah, that costs millions of dollars.
Probably 2, 3, 4 million,
Yeah.
10, 12 million. And, you know, they live this wonderful life, but it won't be so wonderful if all of a sudden, if the homeless and the have-nots organize, they could create tremendous influx, or they could go on and do a lot of damage
Yeah.
to people if they don't somehow bring them up to a worthwhile standard of living.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. So in a future meeting, we're going to talk about that very thing. Daron came up with an idea 2 meetings ago on a way to have an altruism coin, which we'll talk about later. But it's an interesting idea. It's exactly what you're talking about. A way to get public recognition for your good deeds and maybe even public money. So it's an interesting idea because we need to find a way to monetize altruism, which Carrie laughed at me when I said that. She's like, how do you monetize altruism? Those it's totally opposing words.
It's not altruism.
Exactly. It's a really good point.
It's still valid. It's just not altruism.
Yeah, it just seems like there should be a way that we can figure out how to incentivize people, to your point, to do that.
And just to be careful, though, in a future session, we have to not necessarily meld it into a socialistic type thing.
Well, and that's what's going on in China, and that's the path they've chose. And I don't know if you caught it. There's a lot of information in those segments. most people feel around the world that this is the government's responsibility to take care of old people.
The government isn't that smart.
And you can't tax young people to take care of old people, because the young people are getting in the squeeze here, right? There's no one to tax. And you're going to run out of socialism as a method when you get 70% over 75. Even if you get, I mean, we're already approaching, in some cases, 30, 40%. You get to those kind of numbers, there's just not enough productive labor wage earners to tax.
That means that 1% has to pick up the slack.
Exactly, the 1% would have to kick in, but even then, it's tough math. It's tough math. But you're right, we would have to change the system, but it's not something that I see the government doing. Does that make sense?
The government distribution, though, is that unlike the normal business model, you have people spending tons of money that have no responsibilities, and they don't care about wasting other people's money. They're not very good. The government isn't very good at these
Sure,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like the economy there. I mean, I do agree that government can be very wasteful, but conspicuous consumption and other forms of consumption are also extremely wasteful. And capitalism, as in terms of the whole consumption model, is highly wasteful.
Oh,
Yeah.
both have problems. I'm just
Yeah.
saying you can't just shift it to completely socialism.
And this is going to be an evolution. You guys remember the Occupy movement?
Yes.
That's what this was all about. It was about people getting squeezed economically, and as the population is aging, that's going to drive, it's another wedge into the economic squeeze pie, right? It's just another problem that I think most people aren't thinking about, that there's a whole class of people here that are going to be living in their 80s and 90s. That gal working the cash register. We don't want someone, 70, 80, 90 years old, maybe 70 is fine, but 80, 90, there's a point where it just becomes dysfunctional. Jim?
Well, I would say that you also have to somehow cause a change in social outlook. Dating way back to whenever you want to talk about it, it was you worked for 20 or 30 years and you retired, but you only were going to live another 10, so
Right.
you back.
Yeah.
So
You'd never earn that pension.
now, perhaps what you need to engineer is a social outlook that says you have to be working for 40 or 50 years in order to reach that retirement point.
So there is an interesting metric that I came across that I didn't put up in the presentation, that people are staying in their jobs longer. And I didn't realize that I'd seen that too. A lot of my friends at IBM have wound up staying in those jobs when other people left, but they wound up, as much as they could, trying to hold on to those jobs, even though they may not have, sorry IBM, they love those jobs, but maybe some people didn't love those jobs, that they wanted to get out of them, but they stayed, even though it may not have been where they wanted to be, because it was better, and they were kind of sensing, I may not economically make it, right? I'm not 40 years old anymore, I can't go out and jump, or sorry, the new way would be, I'm not 55 anymore, I can't go and jump to another company, right? I'm getting older. And then IBM took some strong reactions and laid off a large percentage, and they got in a lot of trouble with this, that a lot of the people they laid off in their last layoff were the older component of their workforce.
And just short of retirement.
Yeah, and just short of retirement, which was horrible. But I get why they did that, because that's the least productive segment, in their way of interpreting it, of their market space. And it's tough, and I'm not really blaming IBM on this. This is a problem that we're gonna have with every large corporation. But people are trying to hang on to those jobs and stay in the workforce long past when they would have traditionally retired, because there is no pension. There's no safety net. It's all hard ground.
The aspect that you kind of glossed over is you see the grandmother in McDonald's, but at the same time, there's an awful lot of complex jobs that older, quote, retired people could be filling, and in a lot of cases would prefer to.
Sure, but you're going to get and I'm saying you, but older folks are also going to get caught in that same problem that younger folks are getting caught in, is that the percentage of jobs in that job pool is going to get smaller due to AI and robotics. The same hit that young people are going to take on service jobs, most of those jobs you looked at those folks doing are not going to be jobs 20 years from now.
Right.
They already have cut down McDonald's staff dramatically. There's heavy automation. You can order with your cell phone, they'll deliver it to you. And soon when you introduce self-driving automobiles, just think about the decimation of the workforce you're looking at, and that's going to compound this problem.
Right. But the level of wealth will
At the top.
actually probably continue to rise.
Correct. Yeah, the overall level of wealth, as I understand it, is continuing to rise.
Will keep getting richer and richer. going to have to tax the hell out of them, or you have to kill a whole bunch of people.
Right. Well, and today we're choosing to kill people. You know, I hate to say that, but you know, when you're homeless and you're over 65, it's got to be hard, right? They don't live long, healthy, productive lives, and that is killing them. Our social welfare system is breaking down. The solution was to give them a coupon for a hotel for 30 days and shoo them out of the riverbed. That lasted for 60 days, and then they were all back, right? Because there's nowhere for them to go. And that's only the people that didn't make it. There's also a giant number of people that are making it and are doing well and are still hanging on.
I think it's housing. There isn't enough places for people to go, whoever they are. And I've heard it's down, we're lacking about 30% requirement today. That if the kids moved out of their parents' homes, there's not a roof for them to be under.
Well, there's not an inexpensive roof for them to be under.
No, even a cheap roof.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no cheap roofs.
Yeah, it's a problem that I talked about with my family, gosh, way back in the 90s, that when I was looking back then, looking forward, I kind of surmised that the dividing line in the future between the 1%ers and the rest of us, and we didn't call them 1%ers back then, that was a long time ago, was property ownership. Would be long-term, would be real estate. That if you could afford to buy and own and hold on to real estate, then you'd become a very old school word that has a definite negative connotation, a landowner, right? And that's how it was in the past. There were landowners and there were serfs. And making the jump from serf to landowner was almost impossible. And I think we're heading like a freight train right back to that, where the people that own the land and own those places, it's not really in their self-interest to build lots of roofs. Because if they hold on, the real estate prices keep going up, right? And somebody's going to pay those. David.
At the risk of derailing this,
Yeah.
we were really spectacularly wrong in the 1950s when we envisioned a leisure society.
Spectacularly wrong.
How did this happen? How could we be so wrong?
I think we missed the money problem. I think we missed the economics of the rich controlling everything. And a lot of this comes down to control. And I'm not blaming any rich people. You know, I'm not saying that they did this intentionally. But when you have wealth, your ability to gain wealth goes up exponentially the more wealth you have, which causes an inadvertent control of wealth at the top. And it's kind of like I would almost say like a sickness, because it's so compelling to human beings, right? Once I start winning at the economic game, I don't want to lose. And I get into the game, and when you look at some of these people and the money they have, why do they continue to play the game? It just doesn't make any sense at all. It's just a human thing that we want to, once we're a winner, we want to remain a winner. And then we're competing with our peers for control and dominance and economic power. Zuckerberg versus Elon Musk. And we eat that up, don't we? How are people feeling about Zuckerberg getting kicked around a little bit this week? Kind of feels good, but it's wrong. Right? It's weird. We like the drama of our super rich, but the problem is our super rich are keeping all the money. And that shifted us away from the ability of the middle class to have that kind of life. And then also the realities of globalization, you know, is where that leisure class went. We raised the living standard of billions of people around the world through globalization, which was important. We were getting too far separated, right? The people in the low end of the global economy scale were living terrible, horrific lives. And Americans were, you know, literally fat, dumb, and happy, literally. And we've balanced that equation a little bit through globalization. And that took away a lot of American and Western abilities. And that's, I think, what's directly led to this frustration that's caused Brexit and is causing a lot of these other, you know, kind of pushbacks from Western society saying, you know, we want to control this a little more and maintain our way of living and make America great again. And however you want to call that, that's just the long tail reality of global trade. There's people around the world that will work for 1/10 the wage that an American worker will work for, and they're fine workers. And as long as we have a labor-based economy, that is going to flow like water. Today, a lot of that isn't even about that. It's about environmental protections. You can build things in other parts of the world and literally take paint thinner and just pour it in a river and nobody cares because the money's flowing. You can't do that in America. So we're prohibited from huge sections of manufacturing economies because of our environmental protections. Anybody think we should remove those environmental protections in America? Of course not. Of course not. They should add them and level the playing field. And they will when they destroy their rivers and, you know, but those choking smog days they're having in China where literally no one can breathe. They'll figure that out. And eventually, like we figured it out. How many people remember the 70s and 80s? Right? You walk out, it was orange. And you took a deep breath and it hurt. What's it look like today? It's miraculous. It's miraculous. Think of all the good things we're doing. We need to keep doing all these things. We saved the whales, damn it. We really did. They were really going to die. We did that in the Star Trek movie. Okay, other questions? You guys are doing good.
So you mentioned
Yeah.
The middle class, right? But I hear us talk about the middle class shrinking.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it? Is it globalization purely, or is it policy? What's going on here?
It's all those things, yeah. I would say the leading cause, from my opinion, is globalization, but it's also the real estate issue in America. Our unregulated real estate runaway that we did during the subprime mortgage thing, and we keep creating newer and newer, crazier and crazier mortgages. And it's also after World War II when women really entered the workforce, because we trained Rosie the Riveter, and she became independent, and then she could earn a living. And as her living comes up to match the man's, which it's getting real close, which is great, right? But think about what's going on here economically. That should have resulted in an economic boon for the middle class, and the opposite happened. Because prices rose so fast because of the dual income family that they outstripped the income growth. And it continues to run away rampantly. Think about the percentage, if you're renting or buying today, that you pay for your real estate. We did this at dinner the other day. Just do the percentages. It's crazy. It's insane. It should never be over 20% of your monthly income under any economic structure. And for most people today, it's north of 70. You can't survive on $8 whatever an hour because it costs $2,000 a month or more to rent a single apartment. One second.
In certain parts of the country.
In certain parts of the country, sure, but in other parts the wages are lower. So not that much, true, you're right. If you move out into rural America, but then you have that problem that there is no high-paying jobs or no jobs. So the jobs are in the cities. The economic growth is in the cities. Everyone wants to come to the big city centers because that's where the money is. And look at San Francisco. They're the poster child of a single costs $5,000 a month. Are you insane? Who can live there? You can't live on $20 an hour in San Francisco. You can't. And that's, everyone else is just catching up. They're from the future, literally. So David, sorry. I know, I hate time goes by.
Have you thought this if we could change our culture back to something like the 1950s, where there were a live-in mother, housewife, so that would allow more jobs in the other sector. And anyway, have you thought this through to see how much?
I did a long time ago, and I got a lot of flack for it. So first of all, women aren't going back to being housewives. That's not going to happen, because women need to be free to make the choice of whatever they want in their careers. Take it a little different way though. What if there was a way that we economically remunerated a woman for being a mother? Right? If we recognize that as a career, that would be a taxation system of the 1%ers that I could get behind, because that would shift this economy around where women could make that choice. I think a lot of women would make that choice if it was an available choice, but it's not an available choice, so they become professionals and have careers and have less kids. Yeah. But I think all these things are reversible, but the first step is to do this, right? Is we all have different opinions. You know, Michael has different opinions, you guys have different opinions, we all do. And we want to talk about it, and it's interesting for me to hear your guys' different perspectives, because everybody's different and we all have different feelings. But my thought on going back, I thought that when I was younger, I thought the post-World War II women entering the workforce was an economic disaster for the globe, just women entering the workforce in general, because it destabilized the family unit, it changed everything. It was just dramatic. And now that I'm older and I've observed women in professional careers and going through the cycles, women have a lot of stages in their lives that men really don't have. And I think that's a terrible thing career-wise, right? Because you don't have choices. You just go through stages and things change, and that's the way it goes for you. And our society needs to be better at recognizing those stages in women's lives and helping make them more equal to men in a professional way, and that's tough. We don't have a good system for that here, because we're capitalistic, right? I don't know if that answered your question.
I think I have a potential major solution.
Lay it on us.
What happened with the Great Depression, and where a lot of people became homeless at that point in time? It was a real expansion of the boarding house concept. And so I would suggest that a modernization, a revamping of the boarding house where 6, 8, 10 people could live in the same house with lots of different rooms, and what the house would look like, that's not important. But maybe government could actually subsidize the owner of such a facility,
yeah,
without being too heavy-handed. But that would take in a lot of people.
And I'll tell you that we exactly are doing that all over the globe. That's what the micro-housing thing is all about, right? Living in tiny spaces. That is what that is. You're putting 10 times the number of people in it's a boarding house. It's just a boarding house that has a little, you get a closet in the boarding house.
It can be nice. They have a rec room and
yeah.
lots of facilities shared, but I don't see much.
It's more happening in Europe than it is here, but it is starting to happen here. One of the ideas that I heard that I thought was fascinating was in areas that have become, that are gentrified, right? And they want to rebuild these economic areas. Like Detroit is a great example. There's whole sections of that city in the old manufacturing district that are abandoned. What if the city came in, built those up, and then gave them away as co-working space or as co-living space, right? The problem is, how do you do that? How do you enforce it? Who pays for it? It's difficult, and it comes back to what Michael was saying. At some point, we need to start shifting the economy around of what's happening and change things. And there's lots of solutions. That's a good one, I think, and I think that is happening. But I think that we're going to continue to bang away on this one piece at a time. But the thing I really wanted to get across to you guys tonight was how bad it is and how fast it's happening. Look at the dates, right? It's just right away. Sir?
I wanted to go back to the beginning of the meeting when you mentioned something very profound. You said that the whole mandate of our meetup is AEON3.
Yeah.
You said something very profound. You said this is going to be about AEON2.
Yep.
And all of what I've heard of the problems and discussions here is that we are focused on AEON2. We're not going to completely eradicate all the issues of AEON2, focus on AEON2. We have to be AEON3 leaning. We have to look towards, even if it's, and I grant it, it's not going to be a quantum leap from AEON2 to AEON3.
Right.
We have to be gradual. But our solution, our mindset, mankind needs to elevate itself to AEON3 leaning, or we are going to be just running around the same kind of issues that we've been doing.
Absolutely. And I want to also take you back to the beginning of the series, because you were here. Who else was here at the beginning of this? Pat was. Mike was. You're close. You're close.
Maybe the fourth one.
This is about a graceful transition, was the word I used. If we don't manage this wisely, the transition to the third eon will not be graceful. These transitions traditionally, when they happen in nature, remember the whole one on evolution? They're not easy. They annihilate the previous thing. And moving from Eon 1 to Eon 2 wasn't pretty. Look at what we've done to the planet. Look at what we're talking about. Look at what we've caused.
Just the spreading out from Africa caused.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Massive ecological extinction.
Yeah.
In Eurasia, in Australia, in America, just with bows and arrows and spears.
Yeah.
So,
we just laid waste to the natural world.
Yes.
And now as we make this next transition, traditionally these things are nasty and horrible. The goal of this group is to help make this transition a graceful one. So when I see something that jumps off the page at me that's potentially going to make this transition extremely difficult, I want to talk about it. And that was this one. It just jumped off the page at me. Sorry.
I'm new here, but what is AEON3?
So the first eon is when man lived in nature as an animal. In the second eon, and that went on for hundreds of thousands of years. The vast bulk of humanity, we lived very tribally and really kind of pre-tribally, I would almost call it. And then around 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, we started writing things down. There was a big change in the way man perceived his environment. And that led to the eon that we're in now. That is the second eon. We're still writing things down. When you think about the internet, computers and science and the Industrial Revolution and all the stuff that caused this, right? That's us writing things down and sharing knowledge. And being able to not have to take so long to learn about the natural world and then die because I didn't know there's lions over there. You know, a simple picture that says lions that way, food that way, that was left by someone before me is really valuable. So we're at the, in my opinion, we're coming to the end of the second eon. As our technology increases and improves, at some point we'll be able to move past biology. And that will be the third eon. And that will be, again, in my opinion, an evolutionary step for mankind. It'll be the first evolutionary step away from biology that we've ever seen.
Meaning our own consciousness moving away from biology?
Right. You got it. And then how do we make that transition gracefully? Good question.
Make transitions gracefully.
Nature doesn't make transitions gracefully.
Even in history.
Yeah, humans don't either. Yeah, we're terrible.
Yes.
Terrible at this.
We have developed our intellect to a point where we might be able to do this differently this time.
Well, and that's the point, is that because this is the first time we've ever made this type of evolutionary step, or we're the only creature we've ever even conceived could make a evolutionary step beyond biology. So we don't know what's going to happen. And that's why it's worth the time to talk. So we've come past 8 o'clock, so I must wrap up this part of the segment. And then we'll move on to the overtime where we sit around and I don't have to wear this silly microphone. So thanks. Was there any questions from anyone on Facebook, Hans? No? Okay, good. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks very much. Have a great night. Wrapping it up.